Welcome to Bird Camp Radio, where the coveys rise from the high pines, marsh valleys, sagebrush seas, and the shelf rock ledges. Here at camp, the fire is always glowing, the dogs are never far, and the stories of birds, wild places, and the upland life are just beginning. This is Bird Camp Radio. Before we get into today's episode, I want to thank a company Rachel and I personally trust, Pet Commute. We have worked with them several times ourselves, and I can tell you firsthand, they are reliable, safe, punctual, and they give frequent transport updates. That peace of mind matters, especially when it's your dog. If you're a breeder, buyer, trainer, running field dog trials, traveling to a hunt, or honestly just need to get a pet somewhere safely, Pet Commute is a perfect fit for bird dog folks. They offer free transportation quotes, and make sure to mention Bird Camp Radio to get 10% off your pet's travel. Check the link in the show notes, our social media bios, or the comments. I highly recommend them. Welcome back, everyone, to the Bird Camp Radio podcast. This is episode 23 now. We're excited to be here with Dave Zumbaugh. Dave sent in his bio just a little bit ago, and we're excited to read that to you today. Dave Zumbaugh holds both a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science in Biology, and has built a long career as a freelance outdoor writer and photographer. Over the years, he has authored more than 2,000 articles covering hunting, fishing, conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. A passionate outdoorsman and conservation advocate, Dave has hunted and fished across 32 U.S. states, 4 Canadian provinces, and 7 countries. In addition to his field experience, Dave is a competitive clay shooter and an active voice promoting ethical hunting, wildlife conservation, and outdoor heritage. His work regularly appears in publications such as American Waterfowler and Covey, where he shares stories, insights, and perspectives drawn from decades spent pursuing wild birds and fish across North America and beyond. Above all, Dave is a devoted father and grandfather who continues to live the outdoor lifestyle he writes about, still traveling, still exploring, and still sharing the traditions of hunting and fishing with others. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. As I said before, we are super excited to have you here on the podcast. I always like to make the joke you got quite the resume to have on here, and it's above my pay grade to have you on here.
Well, it's all just for fun, you know?
Hey, that's right. Well, before we get started, as many of you guys know, and as you know, we like to play a quick game of rapid fire around the campfire, which consists of 10 questions. These 10 questions pertain to upland game. We have a leaderboard, so everything is timed. So the faster you answer, the better you're off on that leaderboard. Every question can be answered with a single word, so it'll be good. If you don't have any questions, we'll get right to it.
I'm up for it.
Sounds good. All right. Here we go. Favorite wild bird to chase?
Hungarian partridge.
Most challenging bird?
Checker partridge.
Favorite dog trait?
Pointers.
Best bird for eating?
Oh, rough trout.
Go-to field snack?
I'm sorry, please repeat.
Go-to field snack?
Snickers.
Dream hunting destination?
Alaska.
Favorite month to hunt?
Favorite mud dog?
Month to hunt.
Oh, October.
Game bag or vest?
Yeti. I'm sorry. QU.
Solo hunt or with a group?
Both.
Lead or steel shot?
Non-tox whenever I can.
Hey, there we go. That's all 10 questions. We'll release your time at the end of the podcast, so stay tuned, everyone, so we know where Dave ends up on the rankings. So going into this, we would just like to kind of start right from the get-go here, Dave. As many people know here on the podcast, we like to focus on the bio of our guest. And so everything that we're going to be asking him is going to attain back to his bio, what he's done throughout his life, and how everything's kind of led to upland game hunting and what he does within that aspect. So just starting from the get-go, Dave, where did it all begin for you?
Well, my father was a big hunter. And his father, well, I grew up in Indiana. His father, my grandfather, was a fox hunter, had foxhounds.
Wow.
In those days in Indiana, uh, probably in my lineage, some of my great grandfathers probably contributed to the demise of the passenger pigeon, because there was a huge roost by Plymouth, Indiana, where all my ancestors came from in the 1840s, 50s, and that kind of thing. But progressing, they introduced pheasants in Indiana to replace the native prairie chickens that were there before they, planted all the grasslands in certain areas to corn and soybeans. So my dad was a hunter. Yeah, he had a dog, but I mean it was for surviving, farm kid hunting rabbits and occasional pheasant and quail in Indiana. And I heard those stories since I was a kid. My father went to war in World War II. He was a pilot. And I have a newspaper clipping that got in one of the papers that when he was in Korea on his way out, they were shooting pheasants in what is now South Korea, but in Korea. So he brought his pilot credentials home and was a corporate pilot and would take business clients to South Dakota. This was in the mid to late 50s. That shows you how old I am. And he would bring home boxes of pheasants. There would be a cardboard box with a styrofoam lining with pheasants. And in those days, to make sure they were roosters, they left the head on them. I would open those boxes when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. Those pheasants were in there. That's my background, my upbringing. That's what I grew up with.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's kind of interesting because you have a different kind of way into it. I know many people who have been on the podcast, and including myself. When it came to upland game, we all got started with pheasants, but your way and your perspective when it comes up have a little bit of a different upbringing with that. That's really cool. I really like that.
Sure. Well, and again, those stories and so forth of, and my dad did some big game hunting again in the West and that kind of thing. And I'm not much of a big game hunter. I've deer hunted and that kind of thing. But just and he was a good storyteller. So you were enthralled as a kid, and wanted to emulate the old man. And then my oldest brother was quite a bird hunter, and he had English pointers. So when I first got to the age when I was able to go out, there were still fairly good populations of quail and a few pheasants around in northern Indiana. And I think I shot my first pheasant when I was, I can't remember, 13 or 14. But here's something that might astound you. My dad paid $20 to get that bird mounted.
Wow.
I still had the mount.
Really?
Yeah. And it was a trophy bird then. It probably was a 3-year-old bird by the spurs on it.
Wow, that is amazing. Being able to taxidermy a pheasant for $20. Man, that is, you don't hear about that anymore.
No, that's pretty funny. It's made a few moves and carefully packed and so forth. So that's something I remember. I remember the moment and I remember the shot. In fact, it got pointed by a 4-month-old English pointer named Zip, Z-I-P.
Really? Wow. 4 months old, man. That's good that you were able to, and you still have that to this day.
Yeah, sure do.
Wow. And which state are you in again?
I now live. I've lived for years in Kansas, but I've been in the environmental side of the energy business. In fact, I'm still in work, and I'm on the road now. But that has produced lots of opportunities for travel and that kind of thing for me. So I actually live in the suburb of Kansas City. So obviously, Kansas has always been a big pheasant hunting state. I went to Fort Hays State University, and when I was there in the '70s, the pheasants abounded. There were just it was no issue solo hunting to go out without a dog and shoot 4 birds. A lot of places in Kansas.
Wow, that's really nice being able to have that. We've actually had a few at this point. I can't remember. I think we've had 3 or 4 biologists on the podcast now, and I've really enjoyed your guys' insights because you're out there not just hunting but working in the field, and you bring a different perspective to it. So with that, what drove you to decide to go into biology when you as a career?
Well, but again, there were various reasons. I wasn't going to be a lawyer or a banker, and during those times, career choices for college, you could become a teacher and that kind of thing. And I always was very interested in the outdoors and the sciences. So, I had a knack for it. I had motivation for it, and so I chose that career path. And then within that, I some of the professors that I had, mentors, if you would call them that, because that's exactly what they were, developed that passion to move forward. And I actually, when I was at Fort Hays State, I had a, a professor who was a mammologist. That's really who I studied under for my master's. Well, world renowned guy, Dr. J.R. Choate. And I actually did my master's thesis on swift fox in the state of Kansas, which is a relative of red foxes, which in the '70s, well, after the war and so forth, they were trying to poison prairie dogs that killed off all the swift foxes, and there was rumors that those creatures were making a big comeback. And my thesis basically documented that, and they put them back on the game, as a game species, as a fur bearer, not protected because of my research.
Wow, what a cool experience being able to do that. And where do they stand now in today's time? Would you say those
Well,
swift foxes?
along with that, their widespread distribution from Colorado, Wyoming, and Kansas, they're back to fairly common status now. But while I was doing that research, and again, they thrive on prairie dog towns and so forth. You probably heard of this critter, black-footed ferret.
I haven't heard of that. I haven't.
Well, black-footed ferret are weasels, and they are dependent on prairie dog towns. That's where they live, and they thought they were extinct, and they found a few in Wyoming. Now the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service actually has a captive breeding program. They're reintroducing them, and they reintroduced them to some prairie dog towns in Kansas that I did some of my research on. So they are, kind of if you know what a ferret is, if you've ever seen ferrets in pet shops, they're European creatures, but black-footed ferrets were endangered, and now they're back. Well, they're still on the endangered list, but there's hope that they will survive and so forth. But we're getting way off the topic of upland birds, and so we ought to get back on there.
Yeah, you're all right. That's okay. I like to get to know what you were doing and what you're passionate about. Um, Going with that, so where did you take your career in biology? Do you work for conservation, or what exactly do you do?
I, for years I've been into basically petrochemical industry on the side that reduces releases in refining and uh, transportation, rail, and that kind of thing. I'm still in that. In aviation, you might believe this or not, but there are 3 billion gallons a year in jet fuel for us getting on an airplane and flying around the world. And all that has to be refined, produced, transported, get to the airports, get in those jets. So any place that juice is transported from a pipeline into a tank or a tank into a trailer, that's the space that I live in. And we, in the company I work for, we make technology that prevents spills and overfills and that kind of thing. So that's taken me all over the world. I lived in Australia and was our business development manager in Asia. So I've had a lot of experience in that and a lot of travels. But again, that enhanced my opportunities to embrace my passions on the outdoors, whether it be fishing or taking long walks behind a short-tailed dog.
Wow. So you've been able to see quite a bit of different kind of terrain and get to see some new places, get out there and see the world a little bit. That's a good career right there, I'd say.
Right, and it's hard to turn it off. Although I got pressures to do it. So
Well, then it'd just give you more time to bird hunt and get out there and do some more writing, and that's another part that I want to talk about a little bit is so you have your full-time career. Where did the outdoor writing come into that?
this is kind of a funny story as well. One of my friends who went to Fort Hays State, and if anybody's listening to this, remember this website. Uh, he grew up and was from Kansas City, and he turned his career he had a master's degree in botany, but he became an artist. He did scientific illustrations of fish, and all of the state and guides of what have I caught, and for instance, the trout and salmon of North America. I don't know where you've ever seen that, but all of the illustrations this guy did. Joseph R. Tomalleri, unbelievable guy. So I'm, moving around the country and the world a couple times. I came back and he says, "Hey, you need to get involved with this organization called the Outdoor Writers of Kansas." So they invited to join, and I said, I got all these experiences. I need to start putting them down on a piece of paper, which I did, and they encouraged me and gave me some introductions, and some of these things started getting in some publications, some small newspapers and so forth, and connections were made, and I took my scientific writing, and it was tough to get that from more to the creative side. But through those connections and experience and mentoring, I started getting some of my articles published in various publications. And one of the most elaborate, I guess you could say, for the upland bird hunters, if nobody knows about it, is Covey magazine. And I write a conservation column from that. Not every issue, there's 6 issues a year, but I choose my topics that I have knowledge and background and experience on, and they very fortunately for me have agreed to publish some of them and have got some very good feedback on some of those. One that it will probably be in the next issue is just entitled Dirt. It's about soil and soil health and going out and planting a food plot. For instance, if you own some property and you're trying to bring back pheasants or quail or other native upland game birds, some of the traps you might fall into. So that's kind of how I got into the whole writing thing. And of course, photography came along with that. For a while, I had a whole big Nikon camera and all that. Now I'm down to my cell phone and a GoPro.
Wow. That is awesome. So how long have you been writing now? How many years has it been?
Probably since 1994.
Oh, wow. So, because that's where I'm like, wow. I'm looking at this, and you said that you've written more than over 2,000 articles and have been able to contribute to these magazines, and that's a lot of dedication right there.
Yes, and I've written some humorous things in a couple biographical pieces that I've written. One of them was some of the listeners may know a guy named Maynard Reese, and this article is published in Covey magazine. He was an artist of he did fish, he did birds, but he was a 5-time winner of the duck stamp contest.
Oh wow!
And he was in Iowa, and I was on the road going to Des Moines or something. I Googled him, found his phone number, picked up the phone, called him. He says, "Hey, come over to my house." So I went over and interviewed him 2 or 3 times. He was in his 90s at that point.
Holy cow!
And he passed, I think, at 99. So I had some photos of some of his work and collected many, information from it. And I wrote a very detailed and extensive biography on him, his work, his process for painting and so forth. And that was published in Covey magazine as a tribute to one of the greatest wildlife artists ever.
Wow, that is amazing. Being able to have that opportunity to do something like that and be able to contribute to these magazines and be able to follow a passion that you love and you enjoy. With that, I just want to ask the question, do you have like a favorite topic? So I mean you're writing for these magazines. Do you have a favorite thing to write about to be able to generate that kind of content?
My although I've written everything from fiction to poetry, what I'm known for and what people contact me and say, "Can you help us here with something?" are conservation articles.
Okay, the conservation articles. Okay.
Yeah,
And so
supporting habitat or supporting wildlife in some way, supporting water and those kind of things, because that's my academic background, and that's kind of my ambition is to, and I'm involved in everything Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, and those kind of things. And I've written some things for the Pheasant Journal and the Quail Journal for Pheasants Forever. But most everything I've done, I don't write articles. Hey, I went, I saw, I shot it, and I got it mounted kind of thing. It's more conservation focused.
I like that. Yes. I'm definitely gonna have to go in and find those. Can we just find those articles online, I'm guessing? Be able to access at least a few of them?
I think so, and I have a few of I did a biographical series that I'm still working on, and some of those are on Amazon.
Oh, okay. There we go. So if anybody wants to go and support Dave and read some of his work, we're able to do that. Find it on Amazon. Be able to maybe find some on the internet as well. So that's really cool. So kind of going to the hunting aspect, what kind of generates this work of conservation and hunting. Let's talk a little bit about you traveling and hunting birds. I mean, you've been able to have the opportunity to hunt and fish in 32 states, 4 different Canadian provinces, and then seven countries. That's a not many people can say that they've been able to have those opportunities. What's that been like for you?
Blessed, fortunate, lucky. So again, it's from connections from various aspects, but and I'll give you a couple examples. For business, I'm riding on an airplane and I'm reading, believe it or not, I'm reading Pheasant Journal. And the guy sitting in the airplane seat next to me looks over and says, "Are you a bird hunter?" And you're a little bit hesitant to say something about that, not with a total stranger. And so I simply said, "I've been known to take long walks with short-tailed dogs."
That's a good
And
answer.
that's been probably almost 20 years ago. I've hunted every year with that guy from Arizona to Montana to Idaho, all over the place. And that guy has Brittany dogs, some of the best creatures on the planet. And I keep telling him they're beautiful dogs. I love them. but I'd never own one. And he laughs and he says, "Why not?" And I said, "Because they won't retrieve a Canadian goose that I shoot and it falls 150 yards away."
You probably most won't. So I'm just curious, what do you hunt with?
Well, it's a sad story. The last 3 dogs I've had have been German wirehair pointers.
Okay.
And my most recent dog I had put down in July, she was 7 years old and had cancer, and that's something that might be an interesting topic. Of all 3 of those dogs, none of them lived beyond 10 years.
Really?
All had cancer, and all had cancer by the time you discovered it was so virulent, they lasted less than a week or 2.
Wow. So it was very quick.
And between, my wife and I and the vets and so forth, I'm not so sure that it's not. I'm not so sure it's either the environment, because I basically live in an urban area, and I'm running this dog in, parks and along parks that have creeks and water impoundments in them and so forth. And I'm not so sure it's not from toxicity from fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, all that stuff, and or some of the medicines, let's call them, that makes it easy to live with these beasts, like the systemic flea and tick medicine,
Mm.
and or other of the standard wormers and that kind of thing you give the sporting dogs that is not impacting and creating a cancer issue.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I bet there's got to be somewhat of a parallel there between the environment and what's happening with dogs. You would think that'd be really interesting to be able to dig into. I wonder if anybody else has kind of had similar circumstances, I would say. I mean, kind of opening it to everybody. If you have, we'd like to know, just kind of get an idea of something like that. So,
And then think of this as well. When we're out actually hunting in the field with these dogs, we are hunting, sometimes in, milo stubble, corn stubble, edges of soybean fields that are bordered by, Conservation Reserve Program, CRP. And you know how much chemicals they're putting on those agricultural plots now, and those dogs are in there, in the mud, in the water, drinking out of the puddles and all that kind of stuff.
that's true. They're just ingesting it right there. So, and I mean, we already know that there's definitely a parallel somewhere with things coming out, studies coming out on some of these things that back in the day weren't necessarily, we didn't have that kind of information to know. So, yeah, that is really interesting. Um, I got another question for you with when it comes to your history of being able to travel with your bird dogs and being able to hunt and pursue these animals. And this is probably going to be a very difficult question for you, but out of everywhere that you've hunted, do you have a favorite location? Well, favorite state, country that you've hunted in?
I could answer that various ways, but um, the times that I've been down in Arizona, and again with my friend I told you about, I met on the airplane in Idaho, and his buddy met down there, and between us there were 9 dogs.
Wow.
And unfortunately for me, these guys are 20 years younger than me. So we would drop off the trucks and take off. And after about 10 or 12 miles, I'm saying, "Guys, I can't do this anymore. I got to go back." And they said, "Well, we'll see you back at the truck," right?
Yeah, right.
And so that terrain down there, that desert terrain and so forth, and the variety of, to me, they were exotic kind of plants and bushes, and you wonder how any creature besides maybe a mouse, a kangaroo rat might survive those birds down there, the blue quail, scale quail, the gambles, and the immersed quail, and then you'd see these gigantic mule deer. How it must take them, 1,000 acres to survive, and it is every step that you take is uneven, and for old guys with old knees and worn out this or that, it is really, really tough. But when I left there, the word that came to my mind, it was a transformative experience, not for the hunting, for your whole mental attitude about wilderness.
That is a cool perspective. I mean, that's what's kind of cool with your situation is being able to visit these different areas and getting to know different areas. And that's where I want to ask the question, do you see like a difference in upland culture across these regions by chance?
Oh, I think there's a difference in upland culture and hunting in general. I mean, if you've looked at the Pheasant Journal, they have on the back page, they have some pictures from 10, 20, 50 years ago. This is my grandpa and my uncles, and I was 3 years old and that kind of thing. And it was just a Saturday. We're going to go out and you got a little worn out hound or whatever, and you're going to go out and shoot some pheasants. And today I see it becoming more sophisticated. People are saying, it's like bird watching. Instead of watching and taking a photo, you're going to go out and, I collected this bird, so to speak. And people are going to say, I'm going to get them all. I'm going to Arizona. I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to Alaska, and I'm going to shoot ptarmigan, which, I did. I'm guilty of that. So I see in hunting in general, from gear and license fees, every state's raising license fees and so forth. It's tougher and tougher for a working man with a family to say, I'm going to go out and spend $100 for a license, and some places are even state properties. Now you mentioned steel shot. You got to, in certain areas that are near a wetland or something, you got to use non-toxic shot and get a shotgun, and gas and vehicles and all that. It's becoming more expensive. So those days of just, hey, let's just go out and we're going to go out and shoot a few pheasants for Sunday dinner, that's waning to more sophisticated pastime.
That is definitely true. I definitely believe that.
Well, and then all of the publications and studies why people, first of all, old guys like me time out physically. Other ones, they time out or they wane because they no longer have any place to go unless they pay for it. They're paying for a guide or a guided hunt or, pen raised birds. So a place to go. And of course, depending on where you are and what your economy is, the time to go. If you're a family guy, got 2 or 3 kids in soccer and basketball and all that, those things go quickly.
Oh, for sure. All right, everyone. Quick shout out to our friends at Pet Commute. If you ever tried coordinating dog transport yourself, it's not simple. Whether it's a new pup coming home, a finished dog heading to a buyer, a field trial trip, or even, let's be honest, your wife needing her little mutt transported safely, Pet Commute handles it professionally. Rachel and I have personally transported with them, and I can confidently say they are reliable, safe, punctual, and they keep owners updated the entire trip. They offer free quotes, and if you mention Bird Camp Radio, you'll get 10% off your pet's travel. Hit the link in the show notes, comments, or our socials. So there's a lot of different aspects and different things that kind of go into it, like you said. Kind of going on to the next part of this. I mean, I love being able to go through your bio and seeing everything that you do. And another interesting part of your background is being a competitive clay. You do competitive clay shooting. How did you get in? I mean, I guess not really how you got into it, but why did you choose to do that as well on top of hunting upland game? And what kind of gun are you out there using?
I was hoping you would ask the thing about the guns. The clay shooting is pretty recently. When I had to put my dog down in July, and my wife kind of gave me this stink eye, and it's like, I don't want you to get another dog, because if you get a dog that lives like some of them do, 10, 12, 15 years old, you're going to be gone, and I'm going to be taking care of your dog. So I haven't. This is the first time I haven't been real hot to go find another dog. So I said, you know what? I'm kind of going to replace that training and that maintenance and the running and the conditioning of that animal. I'm going to get in the National Sporting Clay Association and start shooting some registered tournaments. Now, qualifying that by saying I've been for a long, long time, I've shot a lot of clay birds to get tuned up for the season. And if anybody out there is thinking about it, that's something I highly recommend. That'll save you so much disappointment. And again, that's a whole new and different community. So I just can't stress enough to improve your proficiency when you're over a dog, and not wounding birds or losing birds because you didn't stone them. That's something I just can't emphasize enough to do. I decided to do it because I live nearby a shooting park called Powder Creek Sporting Park, and it's easy for me. It's 10 minutes to get over there, and I've had some friends over there. So I got serious. Got a guy who's taking some coaching lessons and have been shooting some tournaments. Unfortunately for me, I'm at a stage where I'm going downhill. My hand and eye coordination are not getting any better. So although I've been shooting quite a bit, and my goal this year is to shoot 5,000 registered targets.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good goal right there.
And again, that's another expense and so forth. But I'm doing that kind of. I'm not going to give up bird hunting until I just can't anymore. But you'd be surprised how much that improves when you do that. So in terms of hunting, I basically shoot two guns, and one of these nobody's ever going to hear of. There'll be a few people. For all upland bird hunting, almost all the time, I shoot a 20 gauge over under, and it's called the SKB 585. It's a target gun, and it's got choke tubes in it.
Okay.
So that's what I shoot for all of them. And I may change the tubes, but typically I shoot skeet in the bottom barrel, and I shoot modifier full in the top barrel. Because if you're shooting over pointing dogs and you get a pheasant, sometimes they flush at 10 yards. That's all you need. You let them get out to 20 and pull the trigger, and it's over. And if you miss, then you got to back up at a little tighter pattern.
Right.
So that's at SKB, and they're still in business, but this gun I have is probably 25 years old. And the other thing about it, it fits me. It's like pointing my finger. So besides shooting targets, shooting clays, make sure you get a gun that fits you. Just because you go to buy a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 shotgun off the rack, that a lot of people shoot guns that are not even close to fitting them.
Oh, for sure. That definitely plays a huge pull when you're trying to pull that up. Definitely see that. My brother has a gun that doesn't fit him very well, and he's paying the consequence of that.
And then on the waterfowl side, because again, for the lethality, I shoot a 12 gauge gun, but I shoot a Benelli M2 for the same reason. I have, it's a composite stock gun, and I got two length of recoil pads, depending on if I'm shooting out of a blind sitting on a stool, or if I'm in a layout blind, I put a shorter pad on it so I can mount it faster. But those guns have a stepped rib, and for some reason those guns fit me better than other popular brands. Not to say, not to belittle anybody else. There's a lot of great guns out there, but those are the two guns I use 90% of the time.
Hey, that's good. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's a lot like dogs or anything like that. You got to go with what you're comfortable with and what fits you. Like you said, that's a big thing. If it fits you, you can go, like you said, go out and buy a $3,000, $5,000, $6,000 gun that doesn't fit you, and it's going to do you no good when he goes to pull it up. But when it comes to those clays, I get what you're saying. I mean, for me, I looked at them like, oh yeah, if I can hunt birds, I can shoot clays, and I one year had the opportunity for a work conference to do a tournament for sport clays, and I don't even want to say how many I hit out of 50 because man, those are harder than they seem to be.
Well, it's like golf, right? I mean, they compare it to golf a lot in that depending on what station you're at, they can be incomers going away, crossers, and all that kind of thing. And it's certain tournaments they're very very difficult, long shots and that kind of thing. And then in corporate things, they put them there like gravy courses there, so your average shooter can come in there and have fun and break some birds. But yes, I'll tell you a funny thing about guns. When I decided I'm going to do this, I went and bought a fairly expensive right over and under target gun, 9 pounds. And I went and had adjustable comb and adjustable trigger, and it had all of these features on it. And I tried and tried and tried and went to the patterning board and shot that thing over and over and over. And I could not shoot it as good as I could shoot my duck gun. So then I traded it, sold it, traded, got some cash for another Beretta. This was a model 692, another target gun. I mean, people swear by him, champion shooters swear by him, and I didn't fare much better. So I sold that one, and now for these clay tournaments, I'm shooting a Browning over under. It's a target gun. It's called a CX, and it's got a little bit of a raised rib, and I spent a lot of time at the pattern board on that gun, and I got the thing to fit me better, and I'm learning to shoot it for clay birds, because I'll tell you, shooting clay birds is different than shooting quail or pheasants or mallards. It's and the guys who are great bird shots might not be very good at shooting clay birds, on a champion tournament kind of a course, and vice versa. So once again, practice makes perfect. If you don't shoot any clay birds all winter long, and you maybe get this August, September, I say, hey, go shoot 3 or 4 rounds of skeet. You'll be happy you did come October.
That is definitely true. I definitely agree with that, and it can be difficult, but it's well worth it. Get you some training in, get some practice, get some reps. It's always a good thing. Um, Kind of closing this out. This has been a lot of fun. Um, I just want to kind of go back to the conservation aspect. I mean, earlier you described yourself as an outdoor evangelist and conservation activist, and you're out there writing articles that are really based around the conservation aspect. And of course, here on Bird Camp Radio, that's a huge aspect on what we do on here, is being able to preserve and be good stewards of the land. Um, so we can have other generations and generations to come to be able to enjoy it as well. I'm just curious for you and what you believe. What do you feel like needs to be done, and what do you expect conservation to be like in the future?
It's a tough question. I mean, I mentioned this article that's going to come out, Covey Rise on dirt. My wife and I, we own a piece of property. It's a piece of prairie property in central Kansas. It hasn't been plowed or anything for several years. It's grass. It's native grass for the most part. And I got some quail down there. I have 3 quail feeders out, and we don't hunt them, but we go down there and cut the woody trees out and that kind of stuff on a weekend. And the neighbor comes and cuts the hay on it. Sometimes what we need to do is just leave things alone. We don't need to get too sophisticated in managing the land. Or in where I am, and in Kansas and Nebraska and the Dakotas, they just absolutely have to leave some edge. They have to leave some places for these birds to survive. I have a friend of mine who has property. His parents were homestead. Well, not his parents, but his ancestors were homesteaders in the state of Kansas. He has had property that's been in CRP since there was CRP in the 80s. We used to shoot 50 roosters out of that property in a weekend.
Wow.
We shot 2 last year. There's cover, there's food, there's water, there's everything there, but there are no pheasants there because of, I think there's because of some of the chemicals and some agricultural practices, but we have to just have some natural habitat, and we're getting, we're getting less and less of that. In other places. I wrote an article once for Covey Rise up in Idaho. I was up there and was grouse hunting, and you can shoot some grouse, and you can shoot various kinds of birds up there in Idaho. But the National Forest Service managed the forest. The game was managed by Idaho Fish and Game. Do you see anything wrong with that equation?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting situation.
Do they cooperate? Do they compete? How do they do it? Well, they were managing for 2 species, basically, elk and mule deer in the forest, and not for the grouse and other potential all the way down to the mice. So they managed by controlled burns and some of that other stuff, and they had grazing in the forest. So once again, we need a larger scale cooperation and long-term planning. They're talking now. I saw a recent. We haven't had a new farm bill in 7 years now. One of the editors for American Waterfowler says, "Don't send me any more articles on the farm bill. We're not publishing any more articles on the farm bill.
We're not doing it."
And this year they're having it. My opinion, I wrote an article. We need a 50-year farm bill, not a 4-year farm bill.
Yeah, no kidding. Holy cow.
We need CRP, permanent CRP in there because it saves the soil from erosion and running off down the creeks. And so those are some of the things from we need to start at a grand scale and work our way down. And cooperate. The Department of Agriculture cooperates with the Bureau of Land Management, and everybody gets in the same room and they figure this out. Let's do this. And it's 50 years.
That's a really good point of view. I never really looked at it that way, but I think we get, like you said, too often kind of get too worried about managing it that we overmanage it. And back in the day, it managed itself, and sometimes we just gotta let it do its thing and let nature take its course on what it's going to do. I really like that and appreciate that answer. Kind of closing this out, like I said, this has been an absolutely amazing podcast, and we've enjoyed having you on. I just want to ask one last question. I ask this to every guest, is do you have any advice for upcoming uplanders or hunters who are already within the upland game community? Any good advice that you would give them?
Get in shape, stay in shape.
That's it. That is a good answer. That's a big reason why I like it.
I see this a lot because I didn't go this year to the Pheasant Fest, and it's going to be next year in Omaha. And I'll go. There's all these gear manufacturers, hunting boots, and everybody gets up there and they get excited. All this new gear, they get a new gun, they get new boots, and they go out. Opening day, they go out. They haven't gone shouting claybirds. They got brand new boots on. They got brand new pants and everything on, and they go out there and they think they're going to have a good time. No pain, no gain. I'm right now when I'm done with you, I'm going down to the gym in the hotel I'm staying in.
There we go. I like it.
The older you get, the harder it gets. But again, talk is easy. That's all I got to say. And one last thing I'll mention on this trip, I got off the plane, got in the rental car, went to the hotel, and I turned on TV and I channel surfed. Oh, here's the outdoor channel. Leave it on there. 2 years ago, I was in Alaska for 17 days. Now, part of that, most of it, I was up there to work. My wife flew up there, and we went to a lodge in Soldotna. Great time. Float plane, go out, land in this lake in the mountains, go up on this with this guy up in the mountain, shooting ptarmigan.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible experience, And so I turn on this outdoor channel, and I see advertisement. Dr. Bob's Outdoor Diaries. The guy I was hunting with now has his own show on the Outdoor Channel.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow, that's pretty cool.
So I turned on the guys at the Flush TV show. They went up there and did a TV show on this Dr. Bob. There's another big fly fishing outfit. These guys went up there on YouTube, and they went, after these 5 species of fish they were after. So now Dr. Bob's a famous celebrity. I flew co-pilot with him on 7 flights with his beaver to go shoot ptarmigan and fish with the guy. And now I can't even clean his boots.
That is crazy. That is just crazy to me. Wow. Went from that to that.
Dr. Bob is truly a doctor, and he is a fanatic on physicality. And I worked out for 8 months to be able to keep up with that guy. He was 20 years younger than me going up that mountain. And I'm telling you what, I'm glad I spent every second on that Stairmaster, or I would have never made that trip.
It definitely, I feel like it definitely plays a huge role in especially uplands. I know here in Utah, those Chucker Hills especially, and then our mountains, when we're hunting grouse, you definitely feel it. But it's definitely a great aspect of upland game hunting, being able to have that physicality of it. That's a big thing that I like. At the end of the day, I can say, wow, that was quite the workout. And I got to see some pretty country just moving around, doing a few miles. It's a lot of great opportunity in that way, I feel like. It's never a bad day hunting.
No, it isn't. In some places, whether, you're, depending on where you are, like you said, well, the famous fishing story is trout don't live in ugly places, right?
Right.
Well, neither do wild chucker.
That is true. That is very true. I do like that. Well, that is a great advice, I feel like, for everyone. Get out there. It's a very physical sport and hobby that we enjoy, and I mean, it really does benefit us in the long run with our longevity, our physicality. It's really important to being able to have that aspect of it. But honestly, this has been a great opportunity to be able to talk to you today, Dave. We appreciate your time and your willingness to come on here onto the podcast and to share more about you and what you do, what you've done with your career, what you're doing for conservation, and what you enjoy doing out in the uplands. So thank you again.
My pleasure, and I look forward to someday shaking your hand and being in the field with you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you again, everyone, for listening to the Bird Camp Radio podcast. I hope you enjoyed Dave's episode as much as we did. It was a great conversation, being able to get to know him a little bit better and what he does for conservation and upland hunting. But before you go, we need to release his time for the rapid fire around the campfire game. Dave, your time was 1 minute, 1 second. Thank you again, everyone. Please go follow us for more news and to keep updated on the Bird Camp Radio podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for those posts. As well, go give us a rating on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you again. Until next time. You've been listening to Bird Camp Radio, where the high pines, marsh valleys, sagebrush seas, and shelf rock ledges always call us back. Until next time, keep your dogs close, your shot true, and your campfire stories ready to share. We'll see you back at camp. Don't miss out on the next episode, where we'll host our next guest on the podcast. You don't want to miss this one. Thank you.